Welcome to the Motherlode. This is our podcast to talk about historic shipwreck recovery in the Bahamas. I'm Dr. Michael Pateman, and this is
Dan Porter, Operations Manager.
And we have an exciting podcast for you today. But before we get into that, let's just talk about our sponsors. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Maravillas Rum, Shopwalkers Key, Bahamas Maritime Museum, and the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism. So Dan, I hear we have a special guest in town today.
Man, Mike, you won't believe how I got here today. I've got an old friend of mine from Panama, and he was one of the original guys that was on board the Griffon when Bob Marks discovered the Maravilla in 1972.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, really, really cool guy. He's got some great stories to tell, and I just can't. He'll tell you all about picking up all the silver bars and so much weight and all the. Oh, I can't wait to talk to this guy.
Oh, well, let's bring him on.
His name's Mike Bolton. Let's
Okay.
bring him in. Mike, glad to see you.
Hey, Dan, how you doing?
It's been a
Good to
couple
see
of
you.
years.
Good to
Really
see you.
good
Hey,
to see
Mike,
you.
how you doing? My pleasure.
Mike Pateman, sit down
Please
here.
have a seat.
All right. We're going to talk a little bit about treasure in the Mothervillas, huh?
We're going to talk about the Maravilla today, Mike. You got a lot of other stories to tell about other places, but this is what we're going to focus on today.
But before we get into the Maravillas, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh. Well, I was actually born in the United States, but I lived in Panama for the last 60 years, so forth. And I was in the Air Force, went down to Panama, I started diving, and loved diving, loved doing underwater photography. Diving
Did a lot of
sharks,
spearfishing,
treasure.
didn't you?
Yeah, spearfishing, yeah. I represented Panama, actually, as the national champion for several years. And actually, that's how
In
it led me
spearfishing?
into this Maravillas.
National champion in spearfishing?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, well, actually, I competed for Panama. I represented Panama for international tournaments, and we would dive in different countries, like in Peru, for
Cuba,
Peru,
United States.
Brazil, the United States. So we had all these areas that we would compete, which was very popular back in the 60s and early 70s, up until the 80s, and it sort of petered off. But yeah, that's actually how I got involved with.
So you were doing that stuff way before it was cool.
Oh.
All these kids out there today don't have a clue what they're talking
Yeah,
about.
the fishing tournament.
Oh, way to go,
Well, like I
Mike.
said, we learned how to dive bad,
Yep,
wrong,
yep,
but we sure hell enjoyed it.
yeah. And now
Not
with
too
all
many
this new
rules.
high-tech stuff, it's real easy, huh?
Too many rules, but
Yeah.
it's good to learn and catch up,
So that's how you actually met Bob Marks.
That's right, exactly.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Exactly, yeah. Well, actually, I had been in Cuba, representing Panama in a tournament, and went into Miami. But I had met Bob in Panama. A couple of years before that, he was down doing an article for Argosy magazine, and he told me he's a treasure hunter and did all this kind of stuff. And he wanted to look at if I found any wrecks in Panama, if I knew anything about wrecks. I said, yeah, I know where a few wrecks are, but they weren't. For me, it wasn't any value. I didn't know what the values were. This is way back in the '60s or early '70s, and the time real late days,
Yeah.
And so you had a coin, but it said, who's going to pay you for it? What is it worth now, But I had met Bob, and he told me about his story about the Matavillas and getting involved in this, and he'd been in Port Royal and blah blah. So that's cool, man. So we become friends, and anyway, I went to Panama, and I went up to Cuba for the tournament, and went over to Miami for another tournament. And then I got in contact with Bob. He was, I think, in Satellite Beach at that time.
Yeah.
And I got to, hey, Bob, I'm here in Panama, and I'm here in Miami. Hi, hey, man, what you got in the Motherville? We're working. I said, yeah, well, why not? So that's how I got involved in the Motherville.
And that was in 72.
1972.
1972.
1972.
Long before I was born.
Long time
So
ago.
Bob had done a few trips prior to that and doing a lot of survey and
Did a lot of
having a hard
surveying.
time actually locating it, right?
Exactly. We had a guy we had a guy on the Griffon. His name was, I just mentioned his name a while ago. Forgot.
Bascom's.
Huh?
William
Bascom's.
Yeah.
William Baskin,
He was an oceanographer, right?
oceanographer.
Yeah.
And he was really back then the only one that really knew how to use the
Magnetometers
magnetometers.
and
They
remote
the
sensing.
magnetometers in those days weren't like it is now.
Yeah, a little bit of wildcat going
all
on
over
there.
the place.
Throw a buoy.
Yeah, exactly. Throw a buoy out. You want to check it out. What is it? You know,
You
see
throw a
what
buoy, and then you come back the other way. You get to hit again. You throw another buoy, and then
Yeah.
you throw another buoy right in the middle of it. So it took three buoys to actually try to locate a target.
And you jump in. You jump in. Take what's there. You know,
Right.
check it out. Go back around.
But so before you go on, you said something key there. He had an oceanographer working with him.
Yeah.
So Bob Marks
Willard-
was doing
Willard
real science
Bascom.
on board.
Willard
Oh yeah,
Bascom.
William Bascom. Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
famous.
world renowned.
Well renowned.
And see, that's actually one of the points of this podcast is that there's so little is known about what happened in this country in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. And we really want to put the light on there. There was
Yeah.
some good, there was some bad, and there was some ugly.
Good,
But
bad, and ugly. Yeah.
it's important that people know everything that happened.
Yeah.
And so here we're hearing in the 70s, some real science was ongoing during Bob Marks' search for the Maravillas.
It was.
It was the leading science of the day.
It was.
There was nothing else that they were doing that was any more valuable than the remote sensing they were doing today. And since then, since to today, it's the evolution of the
Oh, my
of the
God.
science.
It's day and night.
So, how many trips did you make to the Maravilla before the actual discovery?
Yeah, maybe this was way before the Atocha.
Oh yeah.
You know, everybody said the Atocha was the first. No, the
No,
Atocha
no.
wasn't the first.
No, not at all.
Yeah, actually, the Maravillas was the richest treasure ship ever found in the Western Hemisphere. The first.
When it was found.
When it was
When it
found.
was found, yeah.
Now,
when it
one
was
of the
found.
things they're saying here, and a lot of this press in here has got it kind of wrong, and they talk about this being the richest wreck in the Western Hemisphere. It's not, and the San Jose off Columbia is the richest
No, it's
wreck.
yeah, definitely.
And this one, is it number two? It's probably up there pretty close.
Yeah.
I'd probably say, but then other people are saying there's, the majority of the richest wrecks in the Western Hemisphere are in the Bahamas. I kind of doubt that too. But I know the Maravilla is up there in the top 3 or 4. I would venture to say it was the second wealthiest wreck in the Western
But
Hemisphere.
in that time, I mean,
Before
but I
it was
said
found.
to be
Let's make sure
found.
that's
Yeah,
To be
before it was
found.
found,
In the 70s, there was no Maravillas, there was no San Jose's, there was no Capitanes, there was nobody.
Right.
So the Maravillas, actually besides the 1715 wreck, was the number 2 on the,
Yep. Yep.
So that was why, at that time. So yeah, Bob had been out a few times before I went on, but had not found anything,
And one of the things that I read in his research, and because Mr. Allen has bought Bob's whole research collection,
Yeah.
and some of the narratives that I heard is how many times he's been out there, and he used to have one particular spot that they called the pipe wreck, and that's where he anchored at every night, and from what I understand, is he thought that was another wreck site, and that's where he anchored. And then I'll let you tell the story about actually pulling up the anchor in that particular area, and what was in the flukes of the anchor when you pulled it up.
We had ballast and we had another anchor, hung to another anchor.
Hung to a galleon anchor.
Galleon anchor is what it was.
this is the
And actually,
story
this
I've
is a
heard.
long story, but it comes up to that, because
Right.
it was terrible. I mean,
Well, don't let me jump ahead. Go back there if you want.
it wasn't a fun trip. I tell you, it was a
Right.
miserable trip. I mean, the thing is, you're out there on the little Bahama Bank. It wasn't, it was
That's the
just-
Wild West out there.
Wild
You're
West.
out there in
Oh,
open ocean.
God,
Yeah.
and had some sharks out there in those days too. But it wasn't, it wasn't like you're saying, hey, I'm looking for treasure, because you really didn't know what it was. It wasn't something that is now treasure. It was like a myth. So you're out there diving on this, and we were actually out of food, out of coffee, out of everything.
How many days had you been out there for
I
that
was out there
trip?
for like 2 weeks.
A couple. Yeah, it was a long trip. at
Yeah,
that
I
point.
wanted to get out of there.
All right. So what happened when you pulled the anchor up? Or you want to start there, or you want to go back a little bit?
Well, like I said, we were out there. We were ready to go home.
Long trip, wore out.
Yeah, it was getting bad. Weather was getting bad. I think it was in September, October, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was September.
It could have been September. I know the weather wasn't great and good. The hurricane season was coming in, and so we're ready to go in. So okay, pull the anchor. Wham! Ballast stones, and then on top of that, an anchor, galleon anchor hooked on the anchor.
Wow.
I tell you, Bob was screaming at me, drop the anchor down again, drop the anchor down. And I'm saying, oh no.
Oh no.
We're going to starve.
Yeah, I want to go home. I want to get out of this place. You're just,
Yeah, I know it is. I know how them long trips
Yeah, I'm
get.
just saying,
Not
okay,
finding
here
nothing.
we go down again. But let me tell you, the strangest thing happened is that we went down, and Bob put the blower on. We put the turning grip on, went right on the area, put in location, dropped down the mailbox. Dude, I mean, I can't even count how long it took, but within an hour or 30 minutes, we were blowing coins. We started buying treasure.
Wow.
Right there.
So
And
the very first hole.
very first hole, right there. That was crazy. I mean, I can tell you stories, but that's the truth. And
Now,
I
how deep was the sand in that first excavation?
I think the whole diving, after the bedrock got down about 15 feet. I
15
think.
feet of sand?
Yeah, and it was like 15 to 20 feet of sand.
Wow.
15 feet is good. Yeah. So 35 feet deep, 15 feet of sand, I believe. That's how we calculated that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of sand to blow away, though.
So do you remember how many coins you found that day?
Oh, I can remember. It was a lot. I mean, it was like there was just a lot of coins.
So when you got the first hole opened up, it probably took you a couple digs. You probably went down there, realized, okay, we got ballast everywhere. We got an anchor laying in the hole because you dug on the anchor, right?
Right.
So you're pulling up coins. What else was in that first excavation?
Silver bars.
Silver bars.
Wow.
Very first time. Very
Hundreds of
first.
silver bars.
Hundreds?
Never seen anything like that. Hundreds. It looked like cordwood stuck on top of each other. I mean, it was like laying like this, when they're blowing away, just like.
Wow.
And we started picking them up and putting them in the baskets. You know.
They were real light. Real easy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
told me that story before about walking around to your hands are just
Your hand
raw
like
from carrying them. You didn't want to
really,
pick
I mean,
up
a few
anymore.
of them, you know, it was like, whoa, you know, just
Yeah.
like eating up. And the salt water just eat up, you know. And we picked up these bars, put them in the basket, and bring them up across
And
the
then they
bar,
winched
bring
the
them
basket
bring
up.
them But we, like I said, we have any food, we have nothing. You know, we got to get out
You
of
got
here.
treasure?
The treasure, but so Bob said, well, you know, we go out and we'll get food, get restocked, come back out. And actually, I want to go back to Panama. Yeah, I said, we said, no, you can come out. We're going to do one more trip out because weather's getting bad and we got to get out quick.
So the first trip, before y'all went back, you went back to Fort Pierce.
Yeah, on Fort Pierce, we went right into Fort Pierce, unloaded everything on the dock. and
So
went into
how
the-
many silver bars do you think came off the boat after that first trip? My dad,
Oh, maybe-
my dad was there. I was there as a kid, but I don't.
I was
remember
on
any
that
of it.
first trip because that boat, we had a small boat. It wasn't very big, let me tell you. That's a long run back into Fort Pierce
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in that little boat that they had.
Oh, so you didn't take the Griffon back?
Oh, no, kept the Griffon there.
Oh,
We kept the Griffon there. Oh, no, wait, no, wait a minute. Yeah, the Griffon stayed.
yeah, the Griffon
The
stayed.
Griffon stayed, yeah. We still had fuel and everything on the Griffon. What we did is we took a boat back into Fort Pierce with all the treasure, and then,
Got groceries and
no, but then the
supplies.
Griffon came in after that.
Oh, after that,
Yeah, I remember that now. I was thinking about that.
probably
The
got
Griffon-
rough or something.
No, they came in for some reason. I can't remember the old captain we had on board there.
He was a grumpy guy too, if I'm not
he was-
mistaken.
He was a wild dude. Man. He was from Louisiana. Really wild guy.
So-
heavy drinker. But the thing is, when we got in, I would say, but you asked me a question about the silver bars, but I'm thinking back, we had to have at least 30, 40, at least, maybe more.
That you got on the first trip, and then you were finding clumps of coins in those same holes, clumps like
Clumps.
this. Now let me ask you a question, because everybody says, and I've read in some of the historical stuff and Bob's notes and Dick Anderson's stuff, they talk about finding chests of coins. Now there's a difference between a chest and a bag. And the 1715 fleet, you find clumps of coins, but they're rounded because they come out of a bag.
Right.
Atocha in Panama,
Square.
you find the square boxes full of coins, about 3,000, 3,500 coins. Did you see any chests in the days, or they were all the rounds?
I see one chest.
Every clump, every picture I've ever seen of Bob's or anybody else's, they're always oval shaped.
Well, I never saw one that looked like a chest. I never seen like a chest in Panama and also on the Atocha, I saw some
Yeah.
pictures, you know.
Yeah.
But I've never seen the square and the Maravilla, no. And I always wondered that, you know, because in those days I really didn't know what between a
Chest and a bag.
what they call it, tally bag,
Yeah.
tally bags,
Yeah.
or chest.
Which was usually a burlap bag or two
But
that was
but
tied.
there would be clumps though.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, like you pick up small clumps would be maybe personal stuff but big clumps, you know.
Do you remember on that first trip and that first day before y'all came back? Do you remember finding any kind of jewelry or chains or anything? The first trip. I know you got into it
not that I
later.
remember anything.
So the first trip
remember
was
any gold.
basically silver bars
I remember any gold.
and coins.
Silver and coins and some artifact stuff.
Yeah, I was about to ask about
yeah.
that. What kind of artifacts?
Oh yeah, God, you know that was we did pick up a lot of artifacts. I mean, a lot of pistols, a lot of swords, blade. You know, like daggers.
Let me ask you a question, because we find quite a few of these out there. We probably found a half a dozen of them. but we're finding these ivory handled, well, I think they're bone handled knives, and they're about this short, but they've got a bone handle on them. One of them that we found had a squatting lion on it holding a shield, but the majority of them are just plain. They might have a little bit of inscription or design on them, but not very much. You remember finding any
Yeah,
of
but
those?
those are like ivory tusks. They're like ivory.
Well, I couldn't tell if they were actually ivory or bone.
Well, there was an ivory tusk on the Motherlode.
Where did the heck that come
I
from?
have
Out of
no
that same
idea.
area? Well, I mean, it's kind of weird having that on that vessel.
But I wasn't there.
Oh,
I
okay.
just saw it.
Dick Anderson found that, right?
He found it. I
Yeah.
think he found it after I went back to Panama.
So
Yeah.
that actually brings an interesting question, because I always thought the ivory tusks were found on the mystery wreck. Or were there some found on both?
Not on the old
No.
pictures that you're seeing with, I think Dick Anderson's holding one. He's got it standing on the deck. Dick Anderson wasn't around when they found the mystery wreck. That was an earlier photo
Yeah.
of the
No,
original.
it was on the Motherlode. I know it because I know
That's
Dick.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was on there, and so there was a lot of barrel hoops.
A lot of barrels.
Did you find any of those?
We're not finding enough of them. There's material that we're not finding on the Maravilla. We're not finding enough porcelains. We're finding some broken pieces here and there, but we're not finding enough porcelains. We're not finding enough
Barrel hoops.
cannonballs. We're not finding enough barrel hoops. I find them scattered, but like on any other wreck I've ever worked, I'm finding thousands of barrel hoop frags.
Yeah.
You know, thousands, and in the porcelain, I'm finding some scattered. It looks like it's coming out of people's personal cargo, but we're not finding the big. Here's 100 pieces of porcelain, or here's some intact porcelain. And I've seen one or two pictures that might have come up to Maravilla in the old days, but I'm not sure about that. So in that first day, and you got there and you got it opened up, you got silver bars, you're pulling up 5-gallon buckets full of the coins left and right. What other significant artifacts, anchors? How many anchors were in that first hole? Just one? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question is I've always heard a narrative that Herbo got on the second pile, and that's what they called the bow section. Do you remember Bob or anybody in the early days calling the section that you found the bow section?
No.
All right, I didn't either. And so
No.
I swear I think that we're not on the same section that you guys are. I don't think we found the section
I
that you
think
guys
you're on
have
the
found
same
yet.
wreck.
Yeah, we're on the same wreck. We're
Well,
real
I
close.
mean, on the same part of the wreck.
Out going up there moving 15, 20 foot of sand isn't the easiest thing to do every day.
No, but how much you moving over where you're at?
15, 16, some places
So what
20.
happened to the anchors? Did Marks recover them, or did he leave them?
No, we picked up one anchor. One. I remember we picked up one anchor. We put it on the deck. I remember we took it in. I don't really remember. That's something I can't remember.
Right. Well,
What we left in Fort Pierce, and we left everything there, and big tanks.
Mhm.
You know, water.
you left all the
Put it in
artifacts in tanks, and,
Everything we
and
brought
the
in.
coins went to the bank, right?
No banks to no. Not the first load. But not with me. They ended up in the tanks.
Right.
We were in the tanks. I remember it was at a time that was when we were in town like maybe 3 times. Oh, you know who was on that wreck with us? I forgot this guy.
Who?
He was there with us. Well, we picked him up going back. Was Neil Watson.
I've heard the name.
Neil Watson.
Neil
Who is
Watson.
He's very famous in Florida, actually. You know, he was had a lot to do
In the diving
the
industry.
diving industry. His son actually runs Neil Watson Jr. has a boat that he runs out of Tiger Beach.
Okay.
In the Bahamas.
So he's a Bahamian, Neil Watson. Okay.
So
Hmm.
he was a good guy. But Neil was there. I went to his house. I actually stayed at Neil's house. And then when we were getting loaded up, it was a very short time, a couple of days, something like that. But I remember then the Griffon came in. They said, "Well, we got to load up stuff and do this." And that's when, and then we took out with a full load and went back out.
All right. So you ended up doing a total of four trips, you think?
4 or 5, I can't remember. Yeah,
Yeah.
4 or 5. Actually.
So the second trip's when it really started getting
We
exciting.
started to really get hot. I mean, we went back out. We got our fuel. We got everything.
How did you get back on the same spot again? Did you leave buoys out there, or
Yeah,
did you do
buoy.
it the mag?
Buoy.
You left a buoy on the
sir.
spot.
A buoy marked the spot.
Now at
That was-
at that time, were you getting harassed by any of the other salvors trying to be out there?
No, you know, Bob always invented that somebody was
Yeah.
after him. You know,
A little
Had
bit of
machine gun.
embellishment.
Had a machine gun. You know.
And we have a famous picture of him sitting there with this machine
Oh,
gun.
probably yeah. We had on that Tommy gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a famous Tommy gun. Yeah.
Well, tell us about the second trip. What happened when you got out
We
there?
got out to the second trip, and we went right out, and I mean, it was the same thing. We had the buoy, we went down, and we started working, and it got exciting. I mean, we started blowing holes, and we were bringing out more silver bars than anything else. I think.
So when you were moving, you were like you would have the excavation and you would just move over a little bit, or would you jump around?
No, actually, you know what? That was on that trip. It wasn't much moving around at all. More or less sitting in the same place. I mean, they move it over a little bit, but I mean, it wasn't like you moving to another area.
Right.
There was just so much stuff in that area that we were bringing up.
Right.
Just crazy amount of silver bars. I mean, there were just hundreds of silver bars, hundreds.
We need to find that area, Dan.
I mean, hundreds of silver
Well,
bars.
I'm finding the area, and what I'm finding is when you all picked them up and you were carrying them and
Yeah.
you dropped them on and you hit another silver bar, and a chunk of incrustation popped off.
what's that?
Well, I'm finding incrustation all over the place.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 5 or 6 pieces of
With
incrustation.
the little mold, the little,
it'll have the design,
Yeah.
the whole negative of what was on the. Yeah, I'm finding
those are
stuff.
cool, huh?
Yeah.
I used to love it when I hear the pop and you see that
Whole shut piece
that whole
pop off.
design, you know, on it. Really cool.
Yeah. So when I'm in spots like that, I know what happened. I know that I don't think they were getting up to the boat. People were knocking it off. I think you guys were dropping them, because they're heavy.
Yeah.
And then a chunk would pop off. So I'm finding those. Some of them we can identify. We've got some that's even had the
maker's marks.
the numbers, the maker's marks, the serial number on them.
Well, it could be they throw them over the side too.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, we were anchored there. We were pushing a lot of stuff over there. So I don't think most of that stuff was kept. I actually kept a few myself because I thought they were very interesting.
Oh, they're real cool.
I mean, even on the coins.
Yeah.
Yeah, you grab the coins, you pop them open.
Yep.
It looks nice.
Mhm.
Coin on the incrustation is really cool. Yeah, so that was that was insane. And then we started picking up on that the third trip out. I think that's when we started hitting the goal.
Back on that second trip, what you got?
All right, we got out on the second trip. Remember getting out, and then, like I said, we ran into a lot of silver bars. We were just, I missed me running hundreds of silver bars that we're picking up, and very impressive for me, but a lot of hard work as well. But still a lot of coins, but mostly coin silver. And then toward into the time there, weeks or so there, we started picking up a lot of, well, not a lot, but started hitting gold coins. And I remember picking up several gold screw, mostly once. Is what I was asking.
Really?
You.
One
Yeah,
screw.
one screw.
I think we've only found one.
No, we've only found 2 scudos.
Yeah, but I thought we found one scooter. Maybe not.
Yeah,
Maybe we've
no,
only got
most of
2.
All of ours are 2 scudos.
And they were all Colombian, one screws. That I can remember. We did pick up some 2s, but the majority were 1s. So
That's interesting.
no 8s, no 4s.
And that's in that same general area.
It's in general area, right on the same area. I mean, we didn't really travel around. We just stayed right in that area. I mean, we may move the boat a little bit, whatever it was, but it wasn't that we're taking off and moving to another area. So we were, and then actually, on that same trip, we started picking up cannons, the bronze cannons.
That's what I was going to ask you about next.
The bronze cannons, beautiful things, man. Wow.
So
And
how
they
many
were
bronze
off-
cannons?
They were off to the, or the east, I think.
You still had a lot of ballast in the holes with the cannons.
A lot of ballast.
Timbers?
A lot of timbers.
Were
Oh,
they
they had, you could see a lot of part of the ship itself. The
Oh,
timbers,
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
they're still there. We put them out.
Not today.
I was left there. We didn't do anything with
Yeah.
it. But they're right off the timber area. It was actually where
How many bronze cannons? And do you remember any iron cannons being in there?
No.
Just bronze.
I remember-
How many
around
do you think you've seen in there?
4
4.
or 5 maybe. I think it was like in those days.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because
Big ones.
I've seen a lot of pictures of them, and I've seen pictures of 2 in one excavation, but I've never seen any more than that. And I've heard of more. And now on that trip, did Bob pick up both of those cannons?
No, actually we picked up 2 and put them on board. I remember that because the pain in the ass. It's the first time I've seen the
You used the yard arm to boom.
Yeah,
everything.
they bring people cannons up on board. You know, I was in the water actually when we brought them up. We floated them up and then put them on the thing. But 2 out of the boat, but there were other ones that Bob said, no, you know, these we don't have time to mess with these right now. Let's cover them back up. So we covered them back up and just marked them. And actually, he had buoys under the water. we covered them up and have buoys coming up to the sand. So
We have found a
were gonna come back
couple
and
of
pick
we
them
have
up.
found a couple like that you could tell that it was a buoy at one time, and the buoy just kind of the styrofoam
That
went
was
away.
us. That's probably us, and
Yep.
what we did. to keep track of them. So yeah, and but those cannons, they stayed on board the ship. They I don't remember ever being taken off, even when we came back in. They stayed on board the ship. Because I remember covered them up and they stayed on the boat.
Huh.
So I don't know whatever happened to those cannons. Just to get back to it, on the third trip, because it was 1, 2, 3. The fourth, I only went for the fourth trip, the last trip I was on, and that's when the government got us.
Well, let's go back to the second trip, and you were in the cannons. Were you getting the emeralds around the cannons?
Oh, okay, yeah. This is what I was going to tell you. Yeah, on one where the cannons were, actually right in the same area where the cannons were, I was working, and then I started hitting this area, this big pile of, sort of blowing it out. It was just where I was working, and it was like just green pieces of glass and stuff. And I was like working, wow, what are these? Look like glass or something. And I was sticking them down in my glove, because I didn't know what they were, and I was more looking for other stuff, you know. And we had found some gold chain there. We had found some gold jewelry on that same area.
Now,
And
let's talk about the chains for a second, because we're finding some chains that look like they have Oriental origin. They look like they're probably from the Philippines or something like that. Were the chains that you were finding there, if you remember, were they just round link chains? Were they real big chains? Or what do you think?
no, they were like the links, but I wasn't. You know, they were like, I can't remember the size of them, how big they were, but they were like, you know.
Were the links like intricate designs on them?
Yeah, exactly. We found some, but like curved, like rope, almost like rope design on the links.
Okay.
You know, I can remember that. You know, but long. Think of a lot of that. I mean,
We
like
found
I
a
said,
chain, I think it was a little south of where you're at. We found a chain last year that was 87 inches long.
Right.
And it was a smaller, it wasn't like one of the big wedding chains or anything like that, but it was a smaller link chain.
That's the one you're wearing like that?
Yeah, it was a little bit bigger than that. And but it was really, and it had an iron key stuck on it. And it was all, you could tell it was probably in a bag with the iron key. And then when it sat on the bottom, the key got encrusted and started growing with, you know, the rust and the sulfides, and then it just encapsulated the part of the gold coin. So when you picked it up, the key was still on the gold chain.
Wow.
So
That's
through
it.
conservation, we had a hard time getting it separated, but we ended up separating the chain from the key, and the key didn't
And the
make
key
it.
didn't survive.
Key didn't make
You
it.
guys was
A lot of iron. Did you remember finding iron keys there?
No.
Okay, because a lot of the iron
we
keys
find
that
the
we're
keys.
finding here are making it through conservation, and none of the other wrecks I've ever worked have the keys really been in this good a shape. I mean, very, very good. I'll show you some in the museum, but very good. So don't let me stop you. So you got a lot of emeralds out of that one.
And that way, we put that wreck there, and they would just pick them up, stick them in, and it came back up. And I told Bob, I found these here, took them out, had a couple of gold coins in my hand, but the emeralds, I said, what are these? It was like rocks or something when I saw them. However, they were also mixed in with a lot of amethyst. There's amethyst as well. And he said, oh man, these are emeralds, it'll stop everything, you know, we go to the emeralds, it'll stop the blowing, stop everything. And I said, why didn't you tell people that there's emeralds here? You know, we'd be looking for
Well, they're
them.
not on the manifest.
Yeah, well, they weren't.
Yeah, they're not.
Oh, I
No,
didn't know.
they're not on the manifest.
I didn't
No.
know.
So were you the first one to find an
I
emerald?
found them. I was the first one to pick them up. And
Amethyst too?
amethyst too.
Wow.
The amethyst, they're all mixed together. It was like, they're all in an area. It seemed like they was like in a chest or something, because
Right.
there was so many of them
Right.
in the area. And they're all uncut, you know, just rough.
Mhm.
You know, nothing cut. But the amethyst, had some quartz, but 90% were emeralds.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we stopped everything, started picking them up and bringing them all in. And some nice ones.
The biggest one that we found so far has been 41 carats.
Oof.
I think you guys, the biggest one that I know that came off the wreck, I think Herbo found it, or his boat found it anyway. It was 108 carats.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's some big ones out there, and there should be some big ones. But
Well, you know, another strange thing that we found, well, you know about all that now, was all these coins were being picked up were actually coins that came off of the Capitana,
right.
off of Ecuador, and they ended
Yeah.
up on the Maravillas, and ended up, you know.
You and I had a conversation the other night where you talked about the Mexican coins.
Yeah.
You were finding a lot of
A lot
Mexican
of
coins in that
A lot
area.
of Mexican coins.
And see, that vessel, it spent very limited time in Mexico, didn't register any treasure out of Mexico. But we found areas where the majority, we found one area with 800 coins, silver coins, and they're
Mostly Mexican.
almost 99% of them were all Mexican.
Yeah.
Full dated 1555s,
There are a lot of dates on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say probably about 60 to 70% of the coins that you have found so far, Dan, have been Mexican.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
We can look it up. We've got a complete database. We collect every bit of numismatic information. I can tell you where every Mexican coin came from on the whole site. I can tell you where
you
every
can tell
potency.
everything came from.
I can tell you where every reign, every date. I can go through anything and
Yeah.
show you and just spell it, just lay it right out, just like we did in Panama.
Yeah.
We started that database down there, and we brought it here, and it's evolved and getting better and better all the time. Mike's doing a great job with the GIS part of the whole thing,
Oh, that's great.
and we're doing pretty stellar work, man.
Oh, I got it.
So tell us about your last trip out to
But
the
that, but that
Maravillas.
thing, excuse me, on Mexican coins, one thing I remember so clearly was the Potosí counterstamp
Mm-hmm.
with the crown.
Yep.
Which we found a lot of those. Not a lot of it I remember seeing. These are really rare.
We found quite a few of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
But
big
that-
Potosís.
Are those off of the Capitana, you think?
Yeah, they're originally off the
They were all there in
Capitana.
1652,
Yep.
1651.
But you got to remember too, the Maravilla did pick up coinage out of Cartagena on its regular cargo, but it then also carried a lot of the treasure from the Capitana. So it's probably
From
a little
Portobello.
bit of both. Yeah, out of Portobello.
From Portobello,
But it's
yeah.
probably a little bit of both. Probably some of the treasure they got because it was right in the middle of the mint scandal, and they were carrying devalued coins. Everybody thinks that those counterstamp coins show that they were worth more. Actually, it shows that they're worth less
Yeah.
in period time. They're a little more rare now, and
Yeah.
they're very unique to get a piece like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we find quite a few of them. But I think it's a mix between what their actual cargo, what they were hauling out of
And that.
Potosí at that time, and the material that was on the Capitana. Because basically, you're only talking about a 2-year difference. It's the same kind of coinage. 54, 54, and
But a lot of these coins are dated 51, 1950. I have some. I still have a lot.
Mhm.
I remember not a lot, but I have some. And I've got counterstamp for 50, dated 50, 51, and 52.
no.
You know?
So what was your most exciting find out there? What do you remember? I mean, what was the thing that's like, oh, this is I found this. Everybody has
the sword. A sword.
one. Really?
Yeah, I always thought that was so cool.
An attack
finding
sword, a big
yeah,
reaper.
Yeah, with the handle still on it. Nice crusted handle and silver.
Yeah.
It
It was a silver sword.
Yeah, silver sword. Yeah, it was really nice. I was like
Awesome.
really stoked about that.
Awesome.
I've always been more. I'm a guy that loves more artifacts than I do a coin.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, you give me an olive jar and a nice olive jar or something, forget the coin, give me that jar.
Yeah.
I get freaking out of this kind of stuff. Or nice
I've seen your collection of olive jars. You
Yeah,
got a
got-
very
got a
impressive
few.
one. Yep. All right, so you had a very exciting time, and then so you did it for maybe about a 5-month period there with Bob.
Yeah.
How was Bob to work with at that particular time? I mean, he just found one of the largest recoveries in the Western Hemisphere at that time.
Yeah.
Was the approach archaeological? Was he taking notes on everything that came up, or was it a treasure grab?
No. I think he's Bob's an archaeologist. He
Right.
he loves that.
True and
of
true.
thing.
That's what he
and true.
really is. Yes.
True, he is an archaeologist, and I knew Bob. Bob was the guy you have to understand.
hmm
He's got his ways, did have his ways. But yeah, he cared about archaeology. He was not, you try to store, take care of that, maybe you got to have that for reference or whatever.
So he kept notes. He tried to do the
Oh, definitely.
diagnostic
Oh,
stuff
definitely.
to find out what part of the ship he's
He
working
did
on.
diaries every day.
The big question. He was thoroughly convinced that was just a small piece of it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
He was thoroughly convinced that the recovery that he was making right there was another big
The
section
big
of it.
stash
Some
somewhere. I mean, he always told me that. There's nothing. There's touched the bucket.
peanuts.
Peanuts.
Yeah.
And I believe if he hadn't,
I think he said peanuts, Chief.
peanuts,
Put the
chief.
chief.
I put chief on everything.
Yes.
Hey, chief.
Yeah.
I mean, that was his word.
Yeah.
But I think if Bob hadn't got himself in trouble with the government, which he did, is that he could have probably he could have probably pushed that thing into really getting a lot more treasure out of that.
I want to ask you about one more thing on there. When he was out there, I know he did this. There was another site, and he thought it was the piece that I'm talking about. But he set up the Griffon on it, and he dug all night long. He couldn't get to the bottom. And he dug all night, and he took probes and water jets into the bottom that night. and he tried to go down there, and he could hear, if you've got a water jet with a steel galvanized pipe on it, you know the difference between hitting rock and iron or bronze.
Yeah.
And he swears he was hitting mixed metal, and he was bringing up, and out of the water jet hole, he was blowing up chunks of wood. Were you on the boat when he did that?
No.
Yeah, that's.
But that sounds strange, is because, I mean, I worked with Bob when the treasure was found. I worked with Bob on every trip.
So you worked from when they found it to when he was done.
That's that. There you go.
It was about a 5-month period.
That's it. He was
Wow.
off. He was gone.
All right.
He worked it from his house
Right.
because he wasn't allowed to go back out on the wreck.
Right.
And that's when I went back to Panama too. And
Right.
I didn't want to end up in a Bahamian jail. So.
I don't think anybody does.
But I know you want to wrap it up the story, but yeah, we went out and what actually was the downfall of this Malavia is that I didn't even know. and then on that last trip we had a company called 20th Century Films, not 20th Century Fox, 20th Century Films. It's a group out of Chicago, and they came down for the shoot. They come down shooting for a documentary. That was on the last trip that I had done. And when they did that, we did that shoot. They took a boat and left. We continued on working. We had a lot of planes flying around us. They were coming in, eyeballing us. And then, no, that was the trip before. I'm sorry, the trip before the last trip. And then after that, we went in. So Bob was standing, everybody in the treasure industry worldwide knew what we were doing,
Word spread real fast.
We were packed. But what happened was we went in for the fuel. The captain went to a bar, started drinking, started throwing out coins out on the deck, saying we found treasure. And then everything hit the fan.
Yep.
Bob
Always does.
Bob.
Always does.
Every bad story starts
man,
with a drink.
That was it. I mean, everybody, right then, the whole treasure world knew
Yeah.
what was going on. So Bob said, let's get out, and that was his word, let's loot as fast as we can.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be, I said, what's going on here, I didn't know he didn't have a permit.
He didn't have what?
He didn't have a
permit?
permit? No, he didn't have a permit. That's why he got arrested. This is how the permits work.
He didn't have a permit. Bob Johnson had a permit with Real 8.
Who's Bob Johnson?
Bob Johnson was Real 8, and they had the original permit on the Maravilla that
Wow.
Bob was working under.
Wow, that's
I don't know.
interesting to
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
The thing what I understand, okay, through Jack Kelly and everybody, this is what I understand, is that they had the permit to search, but once they found it,
They had an exploration permit, that's what they call it today.
but then they have
You
to
get a recovery
claim
permit.
it, and then that's what they did. You can't take anything during that period. I mean, you found it, okay, here I found the wreck. I go knock on your door and say, look, guys, I found. You know what I was looking for? I found it. So now I would like to get an extraction permit or a salvage permit, whatever it takes to get that. And then you apply for that. But he overrode that. And he said, we're going to do this because the hurricane's coming, season coming, we're not going to be able to get back out, so let's take as much as we can, and then I'll ask for the permit.
And that's when you
And I'm
left.
saying, oh shit, I'm not hearing
And back
I'm
in
going to
Panama,
jail.
you were.
and then, sure as, wake up in the morning and you see a Bahamian gunboat, man, right off of us.
Out on
It's
sight.
coming. Oh, yeah. They put up right beside us. Just came right up on us. Bahamian gunboat. Army. We were guns, everything.
So did everybody leave then, or what happened then?
No, they told us in. They took us in.
They took you back to West End.
Yeah. Took us in the West End. And then we said we couldn't leave the boat. And I was really freaking out because I was a young guy, man. He said I was young. I'm not in the state of Panama. And I want to go back home. Why am I getting messed up in this? And then Bob goes crazy and starts insulting everybody and gets in more problems. And then let us go, but under some kind of a thing, I don't know what it was. I had to go back to Miami or back to Fort Pierce, pick up all the treasure, put it on a plane, fly it back to Panama, or fly it back to Bahamas and wheel it into the bank, wheel it into
The central bank in
the
Nassau.
central bank, wheel it back in.
Wow.
With carts, taking all the treasure back to the government.
All the silver bars, everything.
All silver, everything.
We picked them up 4
Well,
times.
I don't know with everything because I left. I was able to go. So
I don't
left.
think it's everything. 'cause
I
I've seen
don't
what's
think
in-
so. No, Bob, you kidding? You think he would give 100% back? No way.
No, because I've seen what's in the central
I mean-
bank, and it's not everything you described.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No.
But there is other places, because I went to see Bob years after that. I do Bob. And I go back to Bob, and I mean, he had silver bars holding up his kid's bed. You know, there's bars under each clip of the bed, stacking the beds up. You know,
Yeah.
what is this? Trying to look at all this stuff. I said, yeah, well. And then he had a lot of stuff put away,
Yeah.
Bob. But you know, that was the end of my time.
Well, I've said this many times, and you know, everybody talks about treasure hunters, and that's where that name came from, is in that particular period. And with the group that we're working with, Mr. Allen, you know, there's been an evolution, and you've known me in my career for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And you've seen how I'm really trying to raise the bar, and elevate the bar, and do this the correct way, and not be.
You're the only one in the business that I know, that I have ever known, that tries to do this business right.
No, it's evolution. It's just like
I mean,
medical industry, farming, whatever it is. Everybody used to use pesticides and Roundup and everything else to kill all. And then now there's, through evolution of the farming industry, they don't use that type of chemical anymore. Same thing with treasure, which is a lot more science orientated, where we're using advanced remote sensing technology, methodology, on-site methodology. And one of the things that we're doing here is 90% of our crew is Bahamian.
That's
And
awesome.
I've got a whole total Bahamian crew out there running my boat right now. I've got one American on 2 boats out there right now. Everybody else is Bahamian, and they're learning, and they want to learn, and it's great to watch these guys learn and apply the sciences that they're learning. And
Exactly.
Michael's leading the charge on the educational side of
Oh,
everything
that's-
through the lab and
That's awesome.
to the conservation lab and the museum. They've got classes. They bring schools through and do everything. It's
Yeah, we've had several thousand school kids
But see,
come
this
in.
is the way to do it.
it is.
This
It
is
is.
the way to do it. People have always approached it the wrong way. And, oh, who can I pay off to get a permit? And what can I steal?
And one of the things
Yeah.
about this is everybody goes into, okay, this is a very wealthy wreck. It's wealthy, yes, but it's wealthy in cultural heritage.
Heritage.
No one's going to pay off their national debt. No country, no island is going to pay off their entire national debt by a treasure recovery out here. But if they're doing it for the right reason, for exhibiting their underwater historic culture, then it's a great thing, and then use it for education, underwater archaeology, land-based archaeology, to engage these young minds. That's what we're really trying to do, and that's what Mr. Allen's striving for. So I'm very fortunate to be working where we're working right now. It's been a dream of mine. I never thought it would come true, but it has. And Mike,
You worked
having
hard to
guys,
do it. You worked
it
hard
is.
to do it.
And that's why we're doing this podcast, is to get the story out, get the truth out, and document this stuff while we have opportunity. And
Well,
I
I
greatly
appreciate
thank
you
you
being
coming
here.
and
I
doing this,
appreciate you
man. I
inviting me.
appreciate you flying all the way up from Panama just to sit here with Mike and I. And
Thank
Man,
you.
thank you,
My
Michael.
pleasure, Michael.
Yeah.
I'm
Look
so
forward to getting
stoked
you
to go
back.
see the museum now.
So actually, it's important for us to say you are one of 2 people who are still living who are part of that original discovery, correct?
That's what I understand.
So this is why this is just so important.
yep,
Because-
you and another gentleman, Mike Daniels. You know Mike pretty good.
Yeah, where is Mike?
He's in Jupiter. He's
He's
doing
in
good.
Jupiter?
Yeah, I've been trying to get him over here this year, and he'll come over pretty soon.
Mike was a good guy. He's one of the good guys.
Yep.
He ended up doing some work after that, but yeah, Mike, he's got a lot knowledgeable about the Matavillas.
Yeah. All right.
So,
Well, so
yeah.
I'd like to thank our sponsors, Maravilla Rum, Bahamas Maritime Museum, Shopwalkers Key, and the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism. And since Maravilla Rum is one of our sponsors, would you like to try it? Taste
Yeah,
it before we
I don't
wrap up?
drink, but I'll stick my tongue, just take a
I'm
taste
gonna
of it.
have to taste
And,
this.
Ooh.
And so this is a brand new rum being launched by Mr. Allen, and we're drinking them in museum shot glasses.
Oh, these are museums.
Yes?
Awesome. The Nassau rum. Becky drink it.
Maravilla rum. Thanks to Mr. Allen.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, guys, I don't drink like I said, but I'll just take a little
Cheers.
smell of it.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks
So wrap
thanks
up
to you
episode
guys,
2.
and good luck for the future on this.
Thank you so much.
Ah, yeah.
Ooh, smoky. I like that.
Woo! It's like
There we go.